Arizona is only the most prominent case, but in effect, have these local initiatives moved into a vacuum that exists because the federal government hasn't acted? Juan Carlos?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Usually you will see me in this program talking about how something is not a federal issue but a state issue. But
that's true. That's a very unusual Cato talking point.
Immigration is a federal issue, so it is the federal government the one that has to set up a framework. And I agree with the leader of this Latino organization saying that letting local authorities to enforce immigration laws is kind of dangerous and it's not appropriate. So that's why we should expect the federal government to move in soon.
You know, when I first started covering immigration as a reporter in the 1980s, local law enforcement didn't want any part of this. Mayors, county executives went on television and said, look, we're not the federal government. We don't enforce immigration law. I'm telling my officers not to ask questions about status. Now we've got Joe Arpaio, but he's not the only one. Instead of being an outlier, he's sort of moving toward the middle on what local law enforcement is willing to do. What happened?
Well, again, it's the absence of federal leadership, but it not only happens at the states, but also at the federal executive level. And we've seen it while the more sensationalist raids of the Bush years have ended, Obama has continued audits of companies that hire undocumented immigrants. Thousands of undocumented immigrants have lost their jobs because of these audits that continue. We cannot criminalize undocumented immigrants who are hardworking, that we need, that our economy needs, but we shouldn't criminalize businesses who actually can find American workers and need these workers to continue to grow their businesses. Deportations last year were higher than the last year of the Bush administration. So again, if we don't pass comprehensive reform, this unfair situation that not only is unfair for the immigrant who comes here to work, but also unfair for business. As I've said before, I mean, without this immigrant workforce, businesses are not going to be able to grow. So the states are passing this legislation, but at the end it's going to backfire. If you have an environment where businesses cannot hire the immigrants they need, where are they going to find them? They're going to go under. So it would have a negative impact on the economy.
But isn't it because businesses were not regulated and the law was not enforced that we ended up with 11 million more people in the country?
I don't know if the problem is the businesses weren't regulated, but the immigration system hasn't been regulated at all. I mean, we have an immigration system that is, broken beyond any sort of a small repair. That brings us back to why we need comprehensive immigration reform. Because actually with immigration reform, you have an immigration system that's regulated, where an unscrupulous employer cannot get away with exploiting immigrant workers and then American workers. And without immigration reform, the status quo is purely unsustainable. And you have local politicians like Arpaio scoring cheap political points at the expense of their community's safety.